Hey folks, and welcome to the Counter Clipping Show. This is episode number 74 for May 16th, 2022. So today we are, as you can see, still trying to do away with the Oban Little Bay as I push the social media posts out. And I feel like I'm making super slow progress with that, but I did between shows, I finished up Army Group Center, so we're done with that, and we're moving on to the newly arrived Race for Bastogne. If you want to see the guts of Race for Bastogne, check out the unboxing videos from the other day. So let me get this one last one up. There's a lot to talk about. The topic tonight is changing tastes in wargaming, and one of the first questions that we had was changing taste in wargaming or, changing individual tastes, and they're not unrelated, so we're going to try and address both. So we will get to that. In the meantime, please do give the video a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I have a feeling most of the people watching are, in fact, subscribed already, but if you're not, please do. If you would like to help support the channel, please do check out the Patreon, the merch store, and the Ko-Fi linked in the video description. Thanks, patrons, for making this possible. And I hope that sometime fairly soon, like in the next couple of shows, maybe no more than 3 shows away, I'll be able to actually make an announcement related to that is a big channel improvement. But we'll talk about that later. In the meantime, we got additional stuff that didn't cost any money to do to talk about this week. So before we get any further, let me get back to the channel stuff so I can make sure I don't miss anybody. Let's say hello to Paul O'Farrell, Iggy Cricktal, Matt Taylor, Mike Anthony Stigler is in the house, Carl from the Wargame Bootcamp, Achilles, Christopher Pressdale, Brady, Charles Latorra, Rob Johnson, David Imperato, Richard D. Fortuna, Daniel Barney, William Bird, Fast Hines, Jeffrey Wesovich, Strelnikoff, the Immortal Fucko, Bill Thornton, Lind Pratt of Central Ohio, Ed Holtzman, Stephen Roberts, Kevin Paulson, Jacob Guernsey, Jason W., Dave 1013, E4 Airman from Central Ohio. It sounds like you're having a bad week. Holy cow. We'll talk about other people with bad weather problems in a minute here. Vince C. Jump me ahead again. Vince C. Jeff Anderson, The Command Tent, Tom Boardman, if I didn't get you already, Chet Bell, Chad Kennedy, Ken X or Ken 10, Half-Assed Gaming, Manders, Brant from the Armchair Dragoons is in the house, Robert DeVere. Yes, Brant has COVID. Congratulations. I've had it at least twice. I hope that you're doing okay. You and the boy are doing okay despite that, however. So there's that. So what's been going on? So we have an adventure story here this week. But gaming-wise, and I'll get to the adventure story when I talk about why I missed the OCS game last Thursday. However, on Wednesday, we continue to plug away at Pacific War. Now, there are, as you know, because I've mentioned it a million times, and if you're interested in Pacific War, you know this. There are engagement scenarios, battle scenarios, campaign scenarios, and the strategic scenarios, which are the entire war. Okay, now the engagement scenarios are largely little solitaire excursions that are kind of intended to build you up to the whole game. We played about 6 of them, and I actually feel we overdid it at this point. I believe you should play like the first 3 and then move on to the battle scenario. Because a bunch of stuff gets abstracted out for the sake of just keeping it an engagement scenario. And I found myself getting confused by that. As soon as we moved to the battle scenario, and we're about midway through battle scenario number 1, which is Wake Island, everything just kind of crystallized as we just followed the sequence of play, and it made a lot more sense. So if you are trying to teach yourself Pacific War, don't feel obligated to play all 8 or 10 or however many engagement scenarios there are. I think we'd have been better served by just playing 3. Do the air scenario, which is Pearl Harbor, the naval scenario, which is Savo Island, and then the land scenario, which is the first of the 2 Burma scenarios, and I think you're good to go. We will mention Origins this week, but we will do a whole Origins preview show that's several weeks away yet. So, we did resume the Blitzkrieg Legend campaign, and we're continuing to plug away at the 3rd Winter. However, so I'm at work, in the office, at work on the other side of town, on Thursday, and I get a text from my wife that says, there's a large rodent in the house. Now, she wasn't really flipping out, but I'm like, really? Large rodent in the house? Ugh, jeez. And she made it sound like she said extremely large mouse, which sounds a lot like a rat to me. So I'm like, okay. So I go get in the car, go home, stop at Lowe's and pick up a live trap because I'm not into killing wildlife in the house if it can be avoided. Get a live trap, set it up, get not really much to do except for, there's no point in babysitting the live trap, right? You put it where it is, you put some bait in it, you walk away. So I went back to work, come down a couple hours later, wouldn't you know it, large rodent got trapped. So I'm going to show you, let me expand the screen here. I'm going to show you the large rodent. That's not the right one. Here's the large rodent that was found trapped in the kitchen. Large rodent, which is technically not wrong. So we found him, and we took him out back in the woods and let him go, obviously. So his name, I decided I was going to call him Carlo on the way home because it's a good rat name. So little bunny here got set loose in the woods out back with a whole bunch of produce that we were throwing out anyway. And here's the video of just him deciding, well, since I'm locked up in this cage anyway, I might as well eat this lettuce, right? So rabbits are not rodents? I thought they were. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a friggin' biologist. So, it was not a large rabbit. I mean, this is clearly a baby rabbit, okay? So, it was adorable, and we let him go out in the back. And, of course, we're like, my wife was like, I don't can we let him go? I mean, what if a predator gets him? Well, I mean, there's two choices here, honey. We're either, I'm letting him go, or you're going to the store and buying a cage right now, and we're keeping rabbits. So, one or the other. So, that was the adventure there. So the other news that we have here is much less cute and appealing news, which is Australian Design Group's Australian office and warehouse has been completely pushed out into the Pacific Ocean as far, I don't know what body of water actually, but it has been completely lost in a flood. So there is northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland, there was a huge flooding a few weeks back. Australasian office warehouse was wrecked, and they lost about 90% of their stock. Now, obviously, the Australian Design Group is shockingly based in Australia, so this was a big chunk of their worldwide stock of everything. So, unfortunately, they you might have some trouble getting your hands on World in Flames stuff. So I do hope that they're conducting. They did have other warehouses. There's a North American distribution center, and I think European as well. So, I mean, this wasn't every single copy of every single ADG product, but this really looks unfortunate. I do hope they had insurance on this and can recover from that in terms of, reprinting stuff, but, who knows. And they're going to start combing the warehouses in Europe and Asia and sending them to the Pacific. So the article here is on AD. I'll put a link to in the chat so people can go check this out if they want to, rather than trying to read that thing off. So that's the Wargaming news. Did I skip any Wargaming news? I have an outline. No, there's one more piece of Wargaming news. This comes from GBACW honcho Dick Whitaker, who posted on Facebook yesterday or the day before, or maybe even this morning, I don't know. So there will be reprints of the 3 out-of-print classic Great Battles of the American Civil War titles from GMT. They are going to start with a revised, updated, and expanded 3 Days of Gettysburg. That will be first on the table. So the idea of putting all 3 rather large games in one big box apparently was determined to be probably not super practical, which I I think we had a feeling that that was going to prove to be the case, right? But the good news is they are going to come back into print. Now, the bad news is the one that I don't have is not Three Dog. I do have Three Dog. I don't have River of Death. So that's the one. That's Chickamauga. That's the one I'm most interested in of the... well, I mean, there's pictures. There's photographic evidence of this. You never saw anything like that out of HMS. So the hilarious thing is we've got 4 cats. They're all fired. The bunny was not large, but it was definitely larger than a mouse, even a big mouse. So we believe that instead of trying to, hunt down and kill and or eat and or present to mommy and daddy the new rodent in the house, they thought it was their new little brother. That's as far as we could tell. So the cats are all fired. That has gone very poorly. So hilarious. Anyway, so if I didn't say this last week, and I think I did, but I'm going to say it again anyway, all of the giveaway winners have shipped, and we're not going to have another giveaway soon on this channel. Well, it will be on this channel. Never mind. It's not going to be on this show in the immediate future, but I did mention that I'm going to be starting an RPG stream, and I did manage to somehow find a time for that. It is going to be every two. This is the current plan. I have 4 episodes planned out. I may change the schedule one way or the other after that. It is going to be on Sunday nights, 7:30 Eastern to 9 p.m. Eastern. So it's going to be 90 minutes. And I would like to do a different kind of show than I do here. Which I think is going to mean, although I don't have anybody lined up immediately, I think that is going to mean I'm going to have more guests, because I don't have a lot of guests on this show. I tend to, if I have a guest or something that I need a guest for, I tend to schedule a different, something special for that, right? Because that's unusual for me. So, all right, try and catch up with the chat here. I think Stigler is saying that he's lobbying against, not against reprints, but maybe against putting them all in one enormous Footlocker-sized box. There is a new game from MMP up on pre-order as well, which is South Carolina and the American Revolution, and it is based on the Angola system. So a lot of people really love that system, so go check that out if you are interested. So that is an interesting thing. And Fire and Sword Manila should be, or Sword and Fire, whatever it's called, the Manila thing, should be out in people's hands like any time. So we'll see how that goes. What do I have coming in? I have coming in Red Storm Baltic Approaches whenever GMT gets around to shipping that. I think they haven't started yet. Don't quote me on that. They charge me for it, I know that. But usually there's a couple of weeks between them charging and they start to ship, which is fine. It's not a big hurry. I've got the new C3I, which is actually en route right now, so you'll be seeing a video on that when it, or not too long after it arrives. And I have the Call of Cthulhu Classic Kickstarter coming, and there's a fairly robust slate of videos coming this week on all kinds of stuff. So, so there's that. I mean, Stigler, to me, that position is completely sensible. I mean, the problem with the putting them all in one box makes me think that it's going to be the Magnificent Disaster problem, which is the notional creation or putting on the table of this product that is so big that they'll never finish it. Also known as the Total War problem. And in fact, we should probably call it the Total War problem. So these are the Oregon Laminations Standard. There is a Standard and a Deluxe. Sometimes these are called the Heavy Duty because you really can't break them. You can certainly break the Deluxe, which are mostly plastic. So these are the Oregon Laminations Corner Rounder. This is, I'm clipping 5/8 inch counters here, so I'm using the 2.5 millimeter version. This one does take a little more practice to get used to. I have a video on that, so do check that out. You can order these directly from Oregon Laminations. I'm not sure anybody actually does that. You really just order them from Amazon. So just search Amazon for Organ Laminations Corner Rounder, and these things will come up. And you can search my channel for corner rounding videos. So check all that out. I have also never played Angola, and I keep hearing very, very, very positive things about it. So Manders wonders how long it will take to see any of the GBACW reprints, and that's, I think, a reasonable question to ask, but I do feel like GMT is really trying hard to work down their backlog of product that has made its number comfortably and is still sitting around in a pile of fictional product for now. So I mean, realistically, we'd be probably talking about 2 to 3 years, and it could be longer, I don't know. And there's also, the question of, what the pre-order numbers look like. If it drags on P500, maybe they might decide we're not even going to do it. So Jeff Anderson apparently had some more problems with this as well. So there's two ways to do it, right? One of which is to hold the clipper upside down and kind of see and make sure that it's seated in there. But you do get a sense, I mean, I don't look at this thing anymore. You do get a sense of after a while, like 10,000 counters, you get a sense of where the counter is. So I really never look at the counters anymore. I just go by feel. If I feel like it's biting too much, then it's biting too much and I back off. And I just rotate the counter, do the next corner, and then I come back to the corner that it got too much on. And 99.999% of the time, it turns out just fine. So I will mention that we're going to have a lot of people in the chat here tonight because we do. So if you want your super chats are available, it is greatly appreciated because it helps to support the channel, but it also helps to highlight your question or comment so that I won't miss it. I can't unfortunately promise not to miss your comment. I'm trying to keep up, but it's, with 118 people in here talking, it's hard to keep up with everybody. So, Mystery Wizard. I'm not really sure why Mystery Wizard took so much flack. I mean, look at all the, non-wargamey stuff that Avalon Hill did back in the day. Like tons. Like half their catalog was like sports games and weird family games and abstract games and stuff like that. 6 actual welcome back to the show. Thanks for stopping by. Chad Kennedy would like to see the other 2 Barbarossa titles finally get produced. Yeah, me too. And I'd also, it's not just 2, right? It's Typhoon as well. And Typhoon is in more of a need of an update than the other 2 are, really. Plus, there's the whole Stalingrad thing that would take the whole series into 42 that never got done either. And I'd kind of like to see that. I'd especially be interested in seeing how that series handles a more robust and efficient Soviet army, because I have concerns that maybe it won't, right? And I don't know. I don't know what was happening behind the scenes. So that sort of because the asymmetry in that series is largely structural, right, with the sequence of play. So certainly, I think there's ways to address that moving forward, and I'm curious to see how it does. So Dave 1013 wonders if Red Badge of Courage will go to a 4-map version like First Blood. Yeah, that's a good question. Brant, I am positive that is not the reason why Legrand Battles is held up, because of Mystery Wizard. I am reasonably sure. So, Sheen Dogu, first of all, welcome to the stream, uses a mirror in the bottom of the bowl so they can see the counter and have the clipping fall into the bowl. That's certainly a thing you could do. Old Lady Plays, thanks for stopping by. And Anton Clota from sunny London. Apparently it's sunny in London today. We had everything today. We had rain, shine, gloom, everything today. So I did, fortunately, it did clear up in time for me to make dinner out on the grill. So that was a good news. Okay, John Stanley, we have just talked about that. There isn't going to be a tri-pack. There's going to be a re-release of each of the 3 individual games, the first of which to be done will be 3 Days of Gettysburg. So that's what's happening there. Let's pull my outline back up here. All right. Origins events. As many of you know, Origins in Columbus, Ohio is happening, and it is in 4 weeks, I think. So they have still not gotten all of the events up. There are 4,500 or so events in. There's another 1,000 or so to go as of when they posted this on Facebook today. This suggests that they're putting the events in manually. So that's a thing that maybe it's their first year with tabletop events. Let's hope that they can improve the process in future years. I will merely point out that as a loyal Origins attendee, I love Origins. It's my, local big con. They have cocked this up every single year for literally 25 years. So, in some way or another, major or minor, there was a hilarious episode one year where they had this brand new system put in. All the computers, everything was brand new computers, new network and everything. They flipped the switch to go live on Wednesday afternoon. Windows Update on every single one of those brand new computers that they hadn't taken care of that on Tuesday. So, that's a thing. that happened that I thought was funny because I was heavily involved in Windows 10 at the time. So that's a thing. So Brant, who has also used tabletop events, I guess doesn't have a bulk approve feature. So that with a big contract like Origins, hopefully they can get that taken care of. So John Madison asks, what's an Origins past cost these days for the whole thing? I want to say it's like $80 or $90. However, and yes, that's higher. However, you don't have to pay for events anymore. So you just get a badge and sign up. You do have to sign up for events because there's still slots. But you do not have to pay separately for most events. There will be exceptions to that, I'm sure, for things like, again, True Dungeon is which I've never done, is the obvious example where it's like a quote-unquote premium event. Alphonse Russo, welcome to the stream. And Cardboard Casualty, welcome back. Haven't seen you in a while. So Brant says that all of the ACD events except the command post exercises and Europa. Oh dear. They have... Yeah, okay. Anyway, I'll complain about that in the Origins preview, which I'll probably dragoon you into being on anyway. So that's a thing. I would typically spend somewhere between, I usually spend at least $20 and sometimes as much as $50 on events, just like event tickets. Typically, if I was doing like an event-oriented Origins, which I actually haven't done in a while. So next year, I think we're going to do an event-oriented Origins again, as opposed to this year. So you're going to probably see less structured wargame content from me next year than you will this year. I'll still do all the usual coverage and stuff, but I would like to do more RPG stuff. So that's the way I feel about it right this second. We are also, by the way, going to be storing this in the Aegis counter trays, which, these Aegis counter trays feel like they were almost made for GTS. So, all right. So the main topic for tonight, 24 minutes in, is changing tastes in wargaming, and here's why this kind of came up. Because we always hear about these newfangled kids with their newfangled games, blah, 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 blah. Not like Mystery Wizard, because that's I don't think anybody is being fooled into thinking that that's a war game. But we see the arguments over things like Twilight Struggle and Fort Sumter and stuff like that, right? So do these things represent, maybe not from the wargaming community, but do they represent changing tastes in the market? Because I think the market for historical games is broader than the wargaming audience. Now, some of those folks are playing games like Puerto Rico or whatever, and, there's, I think, minimal historical content in a game like that. Let me put it that way. So, oh dear. Oh dear. We're backed up. We're backed up on the chat. I mean, I haven't been to Gen Con. So, I mean, I don't know if the Gen Con event list is complete, right? That's still even further away. And I haven't been to Gen Con in 25 years, or Jesus, is it really that long? Maybe it's not quite that long, but it's been a long time. So I think it's been at least or about 20 years since I've been to Gen Con. So yeah, that's true, Iggy Crichtal, but I've never played it, and I'm not really interested in it anyway. So I am not going to comment on that. But again, I don't think it's one of those. I picked it because it's well known. It's a Euro that is on a nominally historical Euro that nevertheless is like 100% Euro stuff, Euro mechanics that don't try to simulate anything. And I think that's different from a typical war game, which is at least making an attempt to simulate something, generally speaking. So my last Gen Con, I'd have to look this up to see what year this was. My last Gen Con was the last year it was in Milwaukee. So it's been a long time. It's like 18, 19, 20 years or something like that. For those who are concerned, James Davis, missing Origins again this year. Will be there next year. Okay, very good. And Buckeye Game Fest. Look me up on the Buckeye Game Fest thing as that gets closer, because we're going to need to organize people to get some games played. So we will make that happen. All kinds of ideas were hashed out at last year's Buckeye Game Fest. And my thinking on Origins is this, right? I mean, I go to several wargaming conventions and plan to continue to go to several wargaming conventions, like Buckeye Game Fest. I mean, for me, Buckeye Game Fest is a wargaming convention, but like Compass Expo and like Winterfest, and maybe I would, if I was to go to WBC, I would treat that as a wargaming convention too. The only convention I go to that has other games that I play is Origins. So I'd like to go, and that is a thing I don't get to do. I get to play plenty of wargaming, locally here too. So I don't, I'm not starved for wargaming anymore here in Columbus, Ohio, strangely enough. Now, I will say that, and this may not have been the last year I was at Origins, I don't know, but there was some wargaming happening there at the last Gen Con I was at, but that was so long ago that, I mean, that's like, it was like, might as well have been during World War II, right? So, oh yes, the youngster, Mr. Jordan. Was he actually 20? I thought he was like 22, actually. Something like that. So anyway, that's my thinking there. So the other thing is that a lot of times we have this kind of sheltered idea because we didn't really talk to people. We weren't involved in a larger community back in the day. Now, and the internet for a lot of people is still relatively new, right? Now, I was on the internet in the mid 90s, okay? On like Cleveland Freenet and that kind of local internet, on dial-up and stuff like that. I was on AOL back in its heyday. I was even on CompuServe for a while, but CompuServe was when I was on, it was prohibitively expensive. But there was a thriving community of role-playing folks on those services, on AOL and on CompuServe. Wargaming, I'm not really sure about. Thank you, Brent. Yes, please thumbs up the video. William Bird asked about Consim Expo in Dallas. That's Consim World Dallas, whatever the thing's called. It's that Consim World show that's in Dallas. That was last weekend, and there was some pretty cool-looking stuff from the pictures that I've seen. We are almost done with the 101st Airborne here. ASL forums on Genie. Yeah, ASL was one where I do remember there was some community around. I was really not doing much in the way of significant wargaming at the time, except with the local people, and that was, ASL and WIF was a lot of what we did between the two. So we did some other stuff too, but it was very easy to have this sort of very insular idea about your opinion reflected, or was at least very heavily informed by, what the people in your social circle thought, and that was pretty much your group, right? For a lot of folks, they didn't have the wider experience. Now, nowadays it's very easy to talk to more people, or at least to see more people talking about these weird games that we play, right? Whether you're doing that on Board Game Geek or Console World or Facebook or wherever, or here, you're seeing more conversation than you maybe had access to back in the 80s or 90s. And I was on the internet, the quote unquote internet, pretty early as that went. By the mid 90s, I was actually paying an actual internet service provider, like not AOL or CompuServe or some other big service that was a big service at one point. What was it? Was it CompuServe? One of those services had Gemstone 3, which was Rollmaster-based fantasy video game at the time, online video game, which would have been very interesting to have seen, and I think I didn't know about it at the time. The Starfleet Battles BBS is still around. Is it still a BBS, or is it a website now? So you'd hope it's a website now, right? Christopher Prest asks, do we think that many of the 20-somethings who are not playing Hexacon or Wargame will end up playing them when they get older? That's a good question. I don't actually... I think the answer is probably yes to some extent, but I don't necessarily know that that's because they got older. I think that might be just because they got more into the hobby and got into more involved games. I think that seems plausible. I mean, this is hypothetical, right? But Rusty and Edie's BBS, I remember that. I probably even signed into Rusty and Edie's at some point. We had a local one in Sheffield Lake too. It's crazy. Yeah, let alone folks who are like in the service that you can't, just hop on the internet, right? John Madison says that video games / Xbox have not helped wargaming. That was the common position up to about 5 years ago. And now I think the common position is that there has been a tremendous boom in analog gaming, some of which is computer facilitated, right? But it's still analog gaming. I'm talking about board games and RPGs, tabletop RPGs. That is happening, alongside the popularity of video games and stuff. So I think that the predictions that... I think we'll all recognize that there are additional components to appeal in a war game besides just the mechanics of the game, right? There's the socialization factor. If we were playing our exact same OCS Third Winter game on Vassal, exactly the same way we do now, where we all sign in from home and sit around for 3 hours while somebody makes their move. That would be a horrible experience. But you put us all in the same room and we can talk and bullshit and trash talk and all that, and suddenly it becomes a social thing, and it's much more fun and appealing, right? So there's that social angle of analog gaming that computer games are simply not going to replace, even computer games that try through, MMORPG type games that try to replace it. They still haven't quite managed it, right? MMORPGs have not managed to kill Dungeons and Dragons. So I think everyone would have agreed with you, John, 6 or 8 years ago, and now I think the data suggests otherwise fairly strongly. And Ed Holtzman mentions, now I've pointed this out before too, that sort of tactile part of the wargaming experience, which I think is really cool, and I like a lot. And that's why I prefer to play with physical pieces as opposed to virtual pieces where possible. Not that there's not plenty of reasons to prefer the virtual pieces. There are, frankly. Now, this is going to be a really good question as to how much of this stuff I can fit in this compartment, because there's a lot of independent 101st Airborne units here. And I don't have quite enough room. That's unfortunate. Kilroy was here. It mentions D&D 4. Honestly, that's worth its own show. I think that's a mischaracterization to some extent, but to some extent it's accurate. That's not really what they were trying to do. What they were trying to do is have like a two-sided D&D experience where one side of it was digital, and that part fell apart in development, and so they just had the books and the maps and the miniatures, and it didn't work in that context. So that there's more story behind that than they wanted to make it play like WoW, but that's, there's some truth to that too, right? The War Room, welcome back. War in the Pacific Admirals Edition is the best PC board game to date. I mean, certainly there's a lot there, right? I actually feel like with the daily turns, I've tried to play it. I have not succeeded at any level yet. Let me put it that way. And a lot of it's because the daily turns. It's like I turn it on and I sit there for 10 minutes just waiting for the auto resolution to finish happening. The D&D, your Tabletop's Edge, welcome back. Matt Taylor says D&D is killing D&D. Certainly there's plenty about what Wizards of the Coast is doing with D&D that is aggravating people. But at the same time, the numbers are the numbers. And it's more popular now. D&D specifically is more popular now than it. And I'm not a defender of D&D here, right? That is a thing we could talk about. What the was that noise? Why does that happen? Now I have played Gary Grigsby's War in the East, and I haven't played War in the East too, and I have a pretty high opinion as computer war games go of Gary Grigsby's War in the East. So let's get that out of the way. D&D 5 has been a huge success for a variety of reasons, right? I mean, part of that is frankly the pandemic, where people were friggin' shut-ins for 2 years, and that was a thing that you can now do from home, and that's a part of it right there. All right, so how many different formations do we have here? Oh, Christopher Prest, thank you so much. Would it be worthwhile to revisit topics that were on previous counterclipping episodes? There are new viewers. People might have changed their views on things. That's true, and I am definitely not going to say that we cannot do that. On the other hand, unless I feel like I have something new to say about something, then I probably won't. But, it's not like we've never circled back to things in the past either. So thanks so much for the question. And we will continue to do that. The Stranger Things thing, haha. I mean, that's a factor. That Critical Role, which is, for those who don't know, what Critical Role is, and I'd be a little surprised at this point if there's anybody in this audience that doesn't know what Critical Role is, but I'll say it anyway. So it is a D&D game that is run by a group of friends in, I think, California, that happen to all be professional voice actors as their day job. And they decided, hey, it would be fun to, broadcast this, and they did. And it, blew up and has become extraordinarily popular and a whole thing, and people are really attached to the cast and the characters and all that stuff. I'll be honest, I say this as somebody with a goal of eventually doing this, so take this for what it's worth. I find it very difficult to watch most RPG streams. So okay. Craig Forrest, welcome to the stream. Now, I mean, my personal tastes... Here's another thing that's true now, okay? If you decide... If it was 1995, and you decided, hey, I really want to play an RPG, but man, it's just so much easier to find players for D&D than it is for Call of Cthulhu or whatever was around at the time. I mean, that would be a true statement, right? You had a significant, and this same thing applies to Wargaming too, right? I mean, it'd be easier to find ASL players than it would be to find, say, Europa players, for a couple of reasons. Oh, for a couple of reasons. One of which is, just critical mass of players. So, now, if I decided a game that I have, and have always kind of wanted to do something with, and have never really seriously tried to ever do anything with, is a game by Mark Smiley based on his Artesia comic books. It's called Artesia Adventures in the Known World. Now, the comic books are pretty neat. And Smiley's a great artist, and it's like he did the layout, he did the art, he wrote the game, all that stuff. It's a beautiful product. I know of no one who has ever played it, right? But I bet in the span of a month or two that I could rustle up 4 players, besides myself, who were willing to play this, early 2000s, neat looking, but nobody really played it because nobody really knew how to deal with it game. So the people are out there, right? I have no doubt that when I eventually decide we will run a Traveler game, which is, a goal, right? Right now, the question is how to fit something like that into the schedule. And I've, had enough of a hard time doing this, trying to fit this Sunday thing in without, I didn't want to necessarily dedicate, this was something that was on the table. I didn't want to necessarily say, we're going to, once a month on the Wargaming stream, we're going to talk about RPGs. We talk enough about RPGs anyway, but this way at least I can direct that conversation better. I can say there will be an RPG stream on Sunday night, May 22nd, which is the actual night, which is next Sunday, by the way. So we could talk about that there. Perfidious Albion, that wasn't just Wargaming. That was all gaming that wasn't Magic or other collectible card games. RPG people felt exactly the same way. Now, Doug Sunsets mentions that he remembers when science fiction and fantasy gaming was going to kill historical games, and that turned out to be an unnecessarily pessimistic point of view. So, I mean, we never said we're not playing RPGs anymore. We're just going to play Magic. But you know what? A lot of our games, our game sessions that otherwise would have been Rollmaster, devolved into us playing Magic all the time because it was a fun game, right? So, Old Lady Play says that Magic had an interesting effect on the hobby. She thinks that we know a lot more about designers and developers since Richard Garfield said they should be the rock stars of the gaming world. I think that was a thing that we saw before Richard Garfield rose to prominence. I mean, we had superstar designers, all the way back to Gygax and Jim Dunnigan, right? So, I think we had, and Richard Berg, actually, much earlier than Richard Garfield. So Ken Games apparently got canceled. I think I heard about that from Dan, who went to Stack Academy and has some video from that. So whenever Dan posts that, check that out. I don't know what this counter is. CP, Command Points, 28th Infantry Division. I guess that's what that is. People didn't buy games based solely on their designers. Now they're on the front of the box. So actually, that's a fair point, I think. There were, I can think of plenty of examples of, pre-Magic games in hobby gaming, meaning war games and RPGs, where the designer's name was prominently featured on the front of the box. However, that was not necessarily common. In the bigger companies simply didn't do it. Like, now now the examples that I have in my head of TSR products actually do have the designer's names. Maybe not prominently, but they are on the cover. And I was certainly noticing, like, hey, I really like D&D modules by this person rather than these other people. That was the thing that I noticed back in the 80s, right? Now, that's true. Gary's name was on all the stuff. And I don't think Gary was necessarily taking credit for what other people were doing, but in the 80s. But that gets into it. We could have a problem having that discussion. But the tendency to somebody, I forget who this was, but it was somebody who was a published designer, my opinion of whom plummeted to a new low when they said this stupid thing somewhere on Facebook, that he felt that Gilbert Collins' name was too prominent on the front of the War for America box, and that Gilbert was not a sufficiently important designer to put his name on the front of the box. I think I didn't respond to that. I might be wrong. But what a douche thing to say that was. So, Brent, we all hope that you are feeling okay despite... I do remember who it was, and I don't really want to cause drama. I don't want people to come here for drama. So, I'm reluctant to say. Jeff Beeler, thanks for stopping by. Now, that's another thing, too, though, is as John Stanley mentions, there are a lot more systems, like your OCSs and your combat commanders and stuff like that, I think, than we used to see. And it's very... Gilbert's great. And frankly, Gilbert's a well-regarded designer. He just hasn't had a ton of different designs. I was incredibly excited and enthusiastic about War for America, and having looked at it, I'm still very enthusiastic. But who is Rando, who's done one game ever, and who keeps milking that? Who the hell is he to make that decision? If Bill says put Gilbert's name on the front of the box, that's good enough for me. So... And fortunately, Jim Ozarski, I don't know if we're going to get to Eggmule tonight. I got to tell you, we might not. It's not Eggmule week anymore. .3D printed... Carl from the Wargame Bootcamp says 3D printed models are not allowed in official GW tournaments and hasn't really affected the market. To what extent does that matter? I have not been in the 40K scene for eons, so it's hard for me to say whether it's important to participate in official GW tournaments or not. Maybe it is. Maybe that's where the scene is. I don't know. But that's a thing that, is anybody shocked by that decision on GW's part? I'm certainly not. Very interesting in that I've been actually digging to some extent in the history of Games Workshop back when they were, I don't want to say the snarky thing, real game company, but I guess I did. Rather than whatever it is that their business they see themselves doing right now. I don't want to poo-poo the people who enjoy their products. It's fine that people enjoy their products. I just ran out of patience with them decades ago. But I mean, back in the day, right? You know, the old folks' day is what I mean by the day. They did a lot of really top quality material, and I would even extend that to the early Warhammer stuff. That early Warhammer product was some really interesting material. Warhammer and 40K, but I'm thinking of the original Warhammer game, actually. I mean, we can have a whole, thing at Origins if we want to about making fun of Games Workshop, and I'd be fine with that. I don't know, and another thing I haven't gotten into yet, and no, this won't be the channel. Unfortunately, this will not be the channel investment I was talking about. It would be a 3D printer, which would be awesome, and I would be delighted to share, 3D plans to Wargaming adjacent stuff like counter sleds and trays and stuff like that. But the fact is, I simply don't have space for a 3D printer, so. GW is essential. So that history is a little bit complicated, but Games Workshop is essentially a miniatures company, and Brant's quote of Jim's position on that is, I think, not without merit. I'm not talking about Warhammer Fantasy RPG, although that did have a lot of charm as well. I'm talking about the original Warhammer miniatures game, which actually had an almost RPG built into it. Stigler, I agree with you on that, and that's why we're here, right? So I will happily cop to Games Workshop's models are really, really, really good models. Absolutely, absolutely indisputable. Matt Taylor, 3D printed counter trays. That's actually was my thought. If you watch Wise Guy History, he does 3D counter trays, and they are more efficiently sized than conventional counter trays, and they're also not, mostly air. So that was super appealing, and I'm like, oh man, I could get a 3D printer. But the problem is not even that I don't have space for the 3D printer. They're fairly pricey to get a decent one. You can get a decent one for a couple $100, but the fact is they're still very flaky, and you have to spend an enormous amount of time fooling with them to get them to print the way you want them to print. They are almost another hobby, and I'm continuing to stake out the position that I do not have time for another hobby. So we're not doing maybe when I retire I'll think about a 3D printer, but that's a ways away yet. So somebody did I think 2 or 3 mil. I think I might have seen a picture of 3D printed, I think 2mm Napoleonics, and basically they are tiny little peg people. It's not about the money so much. I can afford it. It's the time and the space, frankly, because it needs its own space, and it's going to smell bad and all that stuff. And I don't have the. That's possible. They might have 4D printers by the time I retire, since I am but a youngster, but a sprout. Kale Reese, is it you that did those ones that were on Facebook, where it's got like a little knob in the middle that you rotate the counter around? Because I thought that was really a neat idea. Were those yours? If so, send me an email at ardwulfslair@gmail.com, because I want to talk about that. Somebody was trying to dump a C4 corner cutter not too long ago, and I actually thought about saying, yeah, I'll take it, just to have one for the sake of research and reference. 2mm Napoleonics. Oh my god. So I already squealed, so I'll talk briefly. We'll get back to this in an hour, but we'll talk about the show schedule for the week, because there's actually a lot coming. So Traveler Tuesday tomorrow. There will be a Traveler Tuesday, which is the flip through of the classic Traveler Facsimile Edition. There's the Wednesday stream with Dan. The Tuesday stream with Dan. I got old notes here. That's tomorrow as well, and that's at 7:30 on Dan's channel, so check that out. Thursday's there is a video on Wednesday, which is actually going up on the digital channel. I should talk about this. I did a live stream of 6 Ages yesterday, and it was about a 80-minute, 75-minute video or so. 6 Ages is a video game based in the RuneQuest setting of Glorantha. So I, never really fooled with it before, so I picked it up and played it for about 75 minutes or so. So there's some video of that on the digital channel coming Wednesday. That's Wednesday's release. I make no promises to do more digital content. Finding the time for that is trouble. It is something that I would like to do, but, it's not the top priority. There is a Thursday unboxing, which is Almoravid, which looks nice. Well, it looks gorgeous. I mean, physically, the components are gorgeous. There's a bonus unboxing on Friday, which is Compass's new version of the old version of the old version of Russian campaign. This is the Jedko Russian campaign. It's actually really pretty nice. So that's coming. And then on the Sunday, there's the role-playing show. So the Wednesday I live streamed last night. The recording of, you can still go see that on Twitch if you want. The recording of that is going up on the digital channel on Wednesday. Let me be clear on that. So Almoravid is quite heavy. And I think it looks really nice. I'm interested in the system, and apparently I'm not alone in that, because there's a ton of development happening in that Levian campaign space. And in fact, I think the first weekend of June there is a Levian campaign online fest happening. I don't have any details on that, but if somebody wants to reach out to me with details, I will be happy to talk about them on the show, say next week. Dan had a small gopher. We already talked about my home invader. So Craig Forrest got into Hex Encounter Wargaming via miniatures. I don't think that's that unusual. I mean, especially in, if you're, say, through, that's being run by San Diego Historical Games Convention. Okay. Oops. Palelu99 had an order in his cart. I've done that. I don't know that I've done that with a Wargaming order, but I've done that before. I think we've sort of circled around the topic a little bit. I have not played Last Chance for Victory on Vassal, but I have played None But Heroes, but not on Vassal. Generally speaking, the Gamer's product has decent to excellent Vassal modules. So, unless it's super old, in which case maybe not, but some of the super old ones maybe not. I do have some more RuneQuest stuff coming from Chaosium as well, but I'll fill up on all that stuff at Origins, I'm sure. No, I really like. I will, by all means, play Three Dog too. But I really like Last Chance for Victory. It's a wonderful package. It's got like 20 scenarios in it: big scenarios, small scenarios, extra big scenarios, extra small scenarios, medium scenarios. The designer's notes are second to absolutely none. In fact, it's that support material that really sold me on it, and I'm glad I got it because it's expensive now. So. Matt Taylor knew someone who played World War II minis using ASL rules. So that was the original idea behind the deluxe ASL products, was actually that you were going to use micro armor on those boards. And I don't know how popular that idea was, but I can tell you that have never seen anyone playing ASL with micro armor. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. I'm saying I didn't see it. Now, I will also mention, Andrew, first of all, welcome. Andrew mentions play. I always have trouble with this acronym for some reason. A Most Fearful Sacrifice, which is brand new from Flying Pig and Herman Lettman, and it's a branch off of, or a fork off of, the Blind Swords system. And it's very nice. It's a very clean playing system. I do think that the kind of player who is going to be super into Three Dog or Last Chance for Victory is maybe not the same player who's going to be super into Most Fearful Sacrifice. But that system plays very well. It's easy. Scale-wise, it's not going to take a million years to play out, even a huge battle like Gettysburg. So it's a really nice product. And the I've never been. I mean, I only handled the prototype, but I've been very pleased with the production quality on everything that I have physically handled from Flying Pig. Let me put it that way. I think I might be done counterclipping after I finish 28th Infantry Division here. Just because I have started to get a bit arthritic. Doug Sunset says that the licensed GHQ infantry intended for miniatures ASL were terrible models. I do remember seeing them on shelves. That I will say. I just don't remember seeing anyone ever using them. I mean, we could treat ASL as a microcosm of the entire wargaming hobby and analyze the changes inside the ASL community over the last, say, 30 years. I am not the person that is qualified to do that because I have not been an active participant in the ASL community, really ever. Although I did go to an Oktoberfest once. I also like the maps for Three Dog. I think the counters. Well, we could. There's been a long-term plan to do a video that is a compare and contrast between Line of Battle, Great Battles of the American Civil War, and Blind Swords, and I just need the Blind Swords person. I've got a person for Line of Battle, and I've got a person for GBACW, obviously, but I don't have anybody for Blind Swords, and I'd like to have that discussion. Jeff Beeler says, anyone else notice that Mongoose Traveler's availability through distributors seems to be drying up? I actually think that that's the logistics problem that everybody's having, and it is probably hitting Mongoose harder through distribution than many other suppliers because they are a UK publisher. So minimally, even if they're not shipping product over the ocean, they are probably going to be less responsive, if nothing else. All right. Now, 20th Infantry, I can get everything in 4 compartments. 5 compartments. All right, Taco Martini, welcome to the stream. Yeah, that's a good point. Doug mentions that game distributors in the U.S. pretty much means alliance distribution. That's basically true. They have effectively a monopoly on hobby game distribution. The other thing is that although I'm happy to report that both locations of the Guard Tower here in Columbus, Ohio, do have a little bit of Traveler material on their shelves. That's great. But I almost always order directly from Mongoose because I get the PDFs too, and I find it really valuable to get the PDFs. So, because I tend to read the products in electronic format, and then at the table I want the physical books. Because flipping through digital books at the tables kind of sucks. But just doing the reading, I prefer the digital because I can read it on my tablet, right? Now, I'm holding off on a number of orders from Mongoose because I'm kind of tired, and I'm not blaming them for this. Don't get me wrong. It's logistics problems, it's production delays, and all that stuff. But I don't want to have to babysit orders from a year ago that I'm still waiting for the physical product on, and I am babysitting orders from a year ago that I am still waiting for the physical product on. And that's here. I'm not talking about Kickstarter stuff. They've actually been pretty good about getting the Kickstarter stuff out. Check out the Mercenary Kickstarter video that I did a couple weeks ago. But I mean, that's a thing that I paid for it eons ago, and I got the electronic stuff, and that's nice. But if it's a year old and I haven't gotten the book yet, then I gotta email Matt and complain, and I don't want to do that. So I'm kind of waiting for stuff to show up in the warehouse. And I'm happy to do that. I could talk to Herman, but then is that a fair discussion? Try to have, like, the system expert be the designer as well. Herman, I'm sure, would be happy to do it, but I'm not sure that's fair, Now, I would like to have Herman on anyway, for other reasons, so there's that too, so... So, I mean, are they pre-orders, right? I mean, you're ordering, you're paying now, you're getting the PDF now, but you got to wait for the physical product. Now, in principle, that's fine. I don't care about that. But the fact is, I got a lot of feelers out in various places, and I'm tired of having to run it down a year later when I happen to remember it. So, it's not just Mongoose, it's a couple other places too, but Mongoose is probably getting less of my money now than they normally would. Now, another thing that I might do is, go to Cubicle 2 at Origins and buy a bunch of stuff. That's possible. Aaron Somerville mentions, first of all, welcome to the stream. If you buy a book from Mongoose and it takes a year to get it, you're basically giving them a loan with a seriously inflationary environment. I mean, the book's ready, the book's at the printer probably, but if it's going to take that long to get here, it's something I'm not willing to deal with at this moment. Jeff Beeler mentions the Blade Runner RPG Kickstarter. I'm aware of it. It's getting a lot of press. I am not interested in that product at all. I love Blade Runner, the movie. It's a great movie. The sequel's pretty good, too. But I have no desire to play an RPG. And to be honest, I mean, there's just a flood of RPG products that are licensed. There's a G.I. Joe RPG that just came out. I mean, and for somebody whose dream it has forever been to have a G.I. Joe RPG, then great. But I'm just not that interested in that kind of licensed product, with very few exceptions. I did get the One Ring. That's kind of one of my exceptions, right? So am I being a little hypocritical? I don't know that I'm being hypocritical per se, but that's just, I'm very choosy about the licensed stuff that I buy. I'm not interested in Blade Runner. I'm not interested in G.I. Joe. I'm not interested in a ton of other stuff. I mean, Call of Cthulhu's technically, which is one of my declared core RPGs right now, is a licensed product, right? So, but it's also really stands on its own apart from the original literature too. So the way I've always thought of it, I mean, the various Star Wars RPGs, at least one of which I believe I have. I think I have the West End version somewhere, which is a great game. It's a great product. It's a great design. I just have no desire particularly to play in that setting. I mean, there was a story. It was cool. I wasn't there. Some other people were. I mean, I don't want to replicate that experience. But that's just my opinion of licensed RPGs, which, unless it's like a really beloved property, or it's a property in which a lot of the focus was on the world and experiencing the world, like the One Ring, then I don't really see much appeal in that personally. So I'm aware there are plenty of other people with a different opinion about that. And I think there is a new Stargate RPG, isn't there? There was a D20 based Stargate RPG back in the day, and it's actually a good format for a role-playing group if you think about it. Craig Forrest asks, how popular is the original squad leader right now? It's not very popular. I mean, are there still people probably playing it in dark corners of the wargaming world? Yeah, but I don't think anybody's getting together every week and playing original squad leader anymore. Jeff Beeler, you have doubtless will recall that I have extensively pimped the Expanse TV show, and to a lesser extent the books as well, which I have also read. I think it was great entertainment. I am thrilled by it. I am not really into the RPG. I'm just not into playing in that universe. I'd rather make up my own universe or just pick a universe that was designed for RPGs. That said, the Expanse RPG is well regarded by people who have, analysts that I have talked to who have experienced it. John Madison says, is original squad leader bad compared to ASL? Yes and no. I think that is a little bit complicated. Remember why there was ASL in the first place. And why was because by the time you add Cross of Iron, Crescendo of Doom, and GI Anvil of Victory, you have this very kludged together and unwieldy rules machine, okay? And the way that was dealt with was to basically rebuild it basically the same game, but rebuilt from first principles, and what you ended up with was a game that was not similar enough to be compatible. If you're talking about like the original Squad Leader box set, I think that actually probably holds up pretty well as a game, because it's very similar to the way the experience you'd get out of the starter sets, really. I mean, there are some differences, but not huge differences. But then when you start to add in all the other stuff, a lot of which you need to get more scenarios, that's where it starts to break down and starts to make less sense and starts to work less well together. And that's where you really probably want to lean into ASL instead, even if it's just the starter kits. Original Squad Leader is absolutely easier to learn than ASL. It used programmed instruction. It was the first game I saw that used programmed instruction. I don't think it was the first game to use it, but it was designed that way. But the trouble with that is that the scenarios you got, you really were only using the whole game for like the two scenarios at the end, right? Whereas, at least if you're paying attention to all the other places where you can get ASL starter kit scenarios, there's a lot of starter kit scenarios available. Taco Martini mentions the James Bond RPG from Victory Games. I want to say that's an Eric Goldberg design. Somebody correct me if that's wrong. Doug will know if that's wrong. I think that's an Eric Goldberg design, and it's a really good game system. It was one of those that I did not care for at the time, like the Marvel Superheroes game from TSR, actually. One that I didn't get it, I guess, and underrated it at the time. And even at the time, though, there was some really neat material for that. The adventures were neat. Like the Q manual, you could just read through that. That product is worth its weight in gold right there. And the locations book, too, for the James Bond RPG was actually really cool. There was a lot of material for that RPG, and I don't know if it ended up not doing well or not doing well due to the amount of money that they had to send to the licensors or whatever. Old Lady Plays mentions Behind Enemy Lines, which is one of the relatively few strictly historical military RPGs that I'm aware of. Recon is another one. There's been a couple other ones, but not very many. Recon was Vietnam, as I recall. Now, if you have looked at ASL, whatever version it is, and have decided that it is just too dated for you, then Tim Zales mentions Lock and Load Tactical. I've played Lock and Load Tactical. I liked it a lot. But Old School Tactical from Flying Pig is really pretty nice, too. But Lock and Load Tactical has a lot more material for it. So there's that. Twilight 2000 is a science fiction game, though. I mean, it's at the time it was, it was in the future, right? It came out in, I think, 84, 87, something like that. So I don't put Twilight 2000 in the same category as Behind Enemy Lines. The other difference is people played Twilight 2000. I don't recall anybody playing Behind Enemy Lines or Recon more than abortively. Another thing, though, and this is not a taste thing, is that there is so many more choices now. Not only new stuff, but old stuff too, right? Because we can, you can, for not a huge amount of money, you can run down the majority of product from Avalon Hill or SPI. There are some high-priced collectibles in there, too, that are harder to get. But for the most part, for about the price of a new game or less, you can go get something on the secondary market in nice shape. So you not only have all of the stuff that's available now, you have this 50 or 60 year history of wargaming to draw on. The choices that we have available to us now as wargamers or as roleplay or whatever is just enormous. It's just enormous. The Morrow Project is another one. I never owned that. It had acquired a near legendary status at one point. I have never seen a version of the Morrow Project, and I think I've seen 3 different ones, that was even up to the physical presentation standards of when it was published, let alone nowadays. Whereas you can take a look at, I could pull the reprint of Griffin Mountain off the shelf. It's from like 1982, and it looks pretty good. The Morrow Project stuff was very, very small press. It did have it had relatively few because it was hard to get. And there were a lot back in the late 70s and early 80s. There was a regional RPG market, and I wonder if this is true of wargames too. I'm thinking to some extent it might have been, where there were games that were regionally popular but were never nationally popular. One of the publishers there might have been Tritac with Fringe-worthy and games like that, and we're in that region, right? Another one was Dave Null's Isgarth. He was out of Texas, the late Dave Null. And another one, I think, was the Morrow Project. If you were, in a particular region, it may have been far easier to get your hands on at the time. Blue Planet, there's talk of a new version of Blue Planet. I don't know what the details are on that. I have both editions of, I think I have every product ever released for Blue Planet, actually. And it is really, really quite neat. I never played it. I never got the chance to play it. John Madison, I mean, you may be answering somebody that I missed. Judges Guild. Judges Guild produced a lot of really strongly innovative stuff until about 1982, when I think they ceased to produce a meaningful product. They did a lot of early Traveler material, licensed Traveler material, RuneQuest materials, D&D material. There was a falling out with TSR. And I think that probably ended up in the kibosh of their meaningfulness or importance as an RPG publisher. Perfidious Albion's right. The successive starter kits do give you more stuff. But really, once you've got starter kit 3 and you have the vehicles and the guns, you really can, other than the Pacific stuff, which there's not that much of yet, you can really play any starter kit scenario, and they're all pretty equally accessible and good and all that stuff. The Tabletop's Edge says he prefers Band of Brothers to either Old School Tactical or Lock and Load Tactical. Now, I never played Band of Brothers. I did play Company of Heroes, Conflict of Heroes, whatever the Academy Games one is. And I liked Lock and Load Tactical better, and Old School Tactical better. Doug mentions the Wilderlands of High Fantasy. That and City State of the Invincible Overlord. I actually don't really like City State, but the Wilderlands of High Fantasy is really very good, and it holds up. I think not graphically. Graphically it's garbage. And print quality, it's printed on like literal newsprint. It's terrible. The original stuff. There was a box set that came out, I think, from Necromancer Games or Sword and Sorcery Press for D&D 3 or 3.5. That was a really nice edition of that. But the Wilderlands, I think, holds up very well. City State, not so much. I thought a lot that was in City State was pretty goofy. Stigler mentions Last 100 Yards. Now, there's 3 volumes of that out now, I believe. And if I almost said GDW, GMT can continue to support that, then I think that has a chance to make a real space in that World War II tactical squad scale market, which is a very tough corner of the market because there's so much competition there. Now, I will say, City State, I think, was a remarkable product for when it came out, which is like 1978. So I'm not trying to downplay its importance. It's a very important product. I just don't think it holds up particularly well. John Longshore mentions dislike translated. So there is a glossary that you could find somewhere online and print it, and I totally did that when learning Starter Kit. You know, not having played a lot of. Not having played a lot of Starter Kit at the time. I'm not sure I really looked at City State of the World Emperor, to be honest. I mean, I have not really looked at Last 100 Yards, and I really probably should. And frankly, maybe I should really check out Panzer too. To be honest, I mean, if you want a tactical armor game, a World War II tactical armor game, really, you're probably not incredibly satisfied with ASL. And I think where I would point somebody that asked for a recommendation there would probably be to Panzer. I don't really have a problem with this art, to be honest. It's not the most gorgeous stuff I've ever seen, but I don't really have an issue with it either. Now, there was the City State stuff that Mayfair Games did after Judges Guild basically went on hiatus, and that stuff was not very good. Jeff Beeler asks about the Ringworld RPG. Do I have... So, I've never owned a whole game, but at some point I found the tech book in half-price books or something like that for not $1 million. So I have like one book out of the Ringworld RPG, and it's really neat. And it just didn't really work. I think they did the box set and a Ringworld companion, and that was about it. Jason LaRiviere asks, after seeing the Northman, he wants to play some Viking games. Any suggestions? So there's that 850, 840, whatever that Vikings thing is from Academy Games. That actually looks pretty neat. I haven't played it, though. But it is, I believe, pretty much the same system as 1775 Rebellion, which I have played and which is pretty good. So that's probably worth a look. If you are talking about RPGs... There is a Powered by the Apocalypse game called Sagas of Icelanders, which is worth a look if you are willing to deal with the Apocalypse engine. If you are not, then I'm going to say go buy GURPS Vikings and then use the material in it to work in whatever fantasy RPG system you like. And Doug mentions Non-Glorantha RuneQuest is a pretty good game for Vikings. So one of the things that I bought when and before Noble Knights started their sale was Monster Coliseum, the sheets, which is a stupid waste of money, Gods of Glorantha, and Griffin Island. I had that Viking set back in the day, and it is very good. It is a very good treatment of the topic, the Vikings topic, and I've read Norse sagas, and the RuneQuest spirit magic is the kind of magic that they had in the Norse sagas, where it's like, Egil wants his blade to fight, to be keen for the upcoming battle, so he will put a spell on it. That's the kind of thing you see in the Norse sagas, and it fits seamlessly with RuneQuest spirit magic. So if you are doing historical fantasy, non-Glorantha RuneQuest is a really good option, and if you're doing that, then you should look at either 3rd edition RuneQuest, which can be hard to get, or you should look at Mithras, which is the current non-Glorantha. It's the same system. It's exactly the same system as, not exactly, but it's 99.96% the same system as RuneQuest 6, but no Glorantha. So it's 10 to 20%. I think everything I bought was 10%, though, to be honest. So it wasn't killing me. I'm just whining. I should not have sold that stuff back in the day. Now I'm struggling. Ironsworn. I'm thinking of, when you say that, I'm thinking of Iron Edda, which is Tracy Barnett's game, which is a sort of Viking mecha thing. Andrew, the best place to find, there is a Vassal Wargamers Discord. I don't know where the link is offhand. But the other place is that monthly thread on BGG, Vassal Opponents Wanted. That's where I would look if I was looking for Vassal Opponents. I'm very concerned when I hear these strange noises, and I don't see a notification. I have sold stuff to Noble Knight, and I felt like they offered me... I mean, are they offering me less than what I would get for it if I sold it on eBay? Yes, obviously. But I felt like they offered... it wasn't my stuff that I was selling to them, admittedly, but I felt like they were offering fair prices for what we were selling. So, the Riddle of Steel! I made... Brant's probably heard this story. There is a system, James Roberts, for Evinia. It's called Harnmaster. You can absolutely make Evinian characters in Harnmaster. And it's seamlessly supported, too. So that's very, very Viking analog. That's fair. And it's a really good product as well. Back when The Riddle of Steel was a new release, they had a booth at Origins. And I think over the course of that Origins, I walked up to their booth probably about 8 or 10 times, saying, this fascinating new game that you have, The Riddle of Steel. And by the time the weekend was over, they're like, this fucking guy again. So I made a total nuisance of myself. No, it's its own RPG, and it had some interesting ideas in it. I will say that. I never got to play it. Hollenspiel's game called Great Heathen Army, that's just a tactical game, though, I believe. Daniel Barney asked about BCS Aerocore. No, but I think that this is how we feel about it now, and I'm speaking for the group, but I'm also not committing the group to anything here, because it's going to be at minimum a couple of months away, and we'll talk about it. But the two things that are, I think, on our short list to do after Pacific War are some kind of BCS or some kind of CSS. Specifically Montelimar, I think, will be the CSS game that we do, but I'd be very interested in doing something like Last Blitzkrieg. So I am starting to see some video on Aerocore already, so there's that. I did not get to see that yet. I do want to see it. I just haven't managed to do so yet. I don't really want to go to the movie theater right now. People sweating all over me. No thanks. Now so one of the appeal things of AeroCore is that it's a small BCS game that you can start playing BCS easily, okay? That's also kind of true of Baptism by Fire, but frankly, I think the topic of AeroCore is more appealing than Kasserine Pass. I'm not that interested. I'm much more interested in West Front stuff than I am about desert stuff, which I consider Kasserine Pass. You know, it's North Africa, right? Now, that's just me, right? But there are other people who probably feel differently about it. But you also have a lot of room for maneuver well, you get a fair amount of room for maneuver on those Kasserine maps, too, but... Doug says Lutefisk TLDR, Lutefisk is bad, don't. So, which I'm not a big fan of cured fish particularly. I will absolutely use anchovies, I will say that, but and I guess that counts, but I'm not a big fan of tinned fish in general. Now, my first experience with BCS was, in fact, Baptism by Fire, and it really did not sing to me at the time. So that could be, that could be a factor. Jeff Beeler's Baptism by Fire might be a little light lift for the players. It's a quite small game, and I'm not really sure. Could you play it with 4 people and have each player have control 6 counters? Sure, I guess. But I don't think that's a natural fit for it. If that's working for you, hey, by all means, there's no reason it can't, right? Like I said, there's a social component to this stuff too. Smoked fish is a little different. Stegler, smoked salmon. Unfortunately, I am allergic to salmon. I cannot have smoked salmon. It is good. Palelu99 asks, what changed my interest in American Civil War from none to lots? It's all Mark Herman's fault. That's the answer. The answer was I played for the people, and it's friggin' great. And I became interested in the topic, and then played a couple more Civil War games. I think my next Civil War game after that may have been Battle Above the Clouds, GCACW, which is a fabulous system. And if you are starting from a base of For the People and Victory Games Civil War and GCACW, I think you're positioning yourself to become a significant consumer of American Civil War games, because those are all great. Whitefish, I've never had the kind of whitefish salad you get in New York City. I know that it is a thing, and I'm willing to try it in principle. And I love bagels, particularly New York bagels, real bagels, Which is, you can get good bagels here in Columbus, Ohio, but you have to know where to go. You have to literally know where to go. There's no storefront. It's a bagel delivery service. Brian Jervis asked about a player's copy of an older game, and he uses as his example Wacht am Rhein. I got a player's copy of Atlantic Wall. I did clip it, so there's that. I actually had Arctic Char my wife ordered Arctic Char, and I got to taste it a couple of weeks ago. It's really good. Northern Michigan smoked whitefish. I would assume that, the fresh caught Lake Erie stuff is really good too. Let me put it that way. Whatever it is. I'll just have a tiny bit more here. We got to work harder at this. Yeah, that's why I only tasted it. It's not I think it is related to salmon, but it looks like salmon. It's like a pink fleshed fish. So, Whitefish Bay. You're fishing off the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Oh my God. I love seafood. Actually, I like a lot of seafood, including I'll do sushi and stuff like that. Now, there's things I like sea urchin. I've tried sea urchin. It was gross. I don't really want to try it again. That's not to say I automatically like all seafood. Lutefisk or gefilte fish, no, I'd try it, but I'm probably not going to go buy it anywhere. Oh, Doug, you're killing me here, man. You're right, they never made Whitefish Bay. Smoked eel is fabulous. That's absolutely true. I don't know that it's sushi. Well, it is sushi. But, I mean, it's cooked, so it's not like you're eating raw fish. Vince Ree, we cover all topics here sooner or later, so... Eel is one of my favorites, actually. It's delicious. I don't particularly... Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, I've never been to Japan and probably won't ever go. But I would assume that, I mean, they love seafood there, right? There are, Scotch pairings that include seafood. So, interestingly, when we went to the fancy restaurant for my birthday, my wife got the seafood course. She normally does not like seafood. And it was Arctic char and another kind of fish. I got the duck breast, which was really good. I will say that that for the kind of food it was, which was like really rich food, the portions were way too big. I am pretty sure that Old Lady Plays, thanks for stopping by. Scott Bell asks if there's fishing rule in Campaign for North Africa. If there is, I should mention that. If there is, that's where it would be. So, Matt Colville, who's an old RPG Net acquaintance of mine, started doing a D&D stream several years ago, and it really took off, and it's become a big thing. He's done a bunch of big Kickstarters now. He did a Kickstarter for a D&D monster book, and his random $2 million, if we hit $2 million stretch goal, was that they're going to film a full turn of Campaign for North Africa. And to everyone's surprise, they hit the 2 million. So, Matt, I'm looking and waiting for my Campaign for North Africa playthrough. Where is it? I can't think of one under me at 100 offhand. I did have raw oysters when we were in Seattle. I have played Car Wars. Now, the only Car Wars I have at the moment is actually this one. And you know what? Although this is a few years old now, I've never played this copy. It's all paper maps, but they do give you like real counters, pre-clipped no less. Now these I would not round the corners on, because you actually shouldn't, because of the way the movement works off this key. The new version of Car Wars is much fancier than this. But you know what? If I'm going to play Car Wars, I'd prefer to just play this little tiny old Car Wars. I'm perfectly happy with that. It's a fun game. I am pretty sure the new one's probably more different than I'm making it sound like. But now, I haven't played it in ages either, to be honest. So... Well, Car Wars should remind you of Ogre, the same designer. So so Steve Jackson has done some humongous Kickstarters in the last couple of years. They did the Triplanetary Kickstarter, which was like the smallest of them. They did the Fantasy Trip Kickstarter, which is just, it's like a 200. You could go buy the kit. It's $200. It's an enormous quantity of shit. And they did the Car Wars one, which I haven't really even seen. I tell you what, I'm a little tempted by the fantasy trip stuff, but then I think about it, it's like, man, I'm not going to play that. I got GURPS. GURPS is like the next gen fantasy trip anyway, that I can do whatever I want with, let alone, I'm not limited to the, the fantasy trip stuff. So I believe that the new Car Wars is streamlined. I believe that's true. But I'm not your guy on that, so... Invest in Kickstarters. So here's the thing. Somebody asked the question of how many Kickstarters. I guess I'll talk about this. Somebody asked the question on Twitter today of how many Kickstarters have you backed, and I'm like, I probably like 8, right? And I'm like, and I can go check. I've backed 21 Kickstarters. Actually, that's a lot more than I thought. That's more than twice as many as I thought. Now, 11 of those. Were like Kickstarters that I expected product from, whether that was digital product or physical product. The other Kickstarters were, I'm throwing in moral support type of things where I sent Raven C.S. McCracken a couple bucks for Cinnabar, his new Cinnabar, for example. And that's fine. Just because I wanted to show Raven that people believe in Raven. So it's a thing. So, of the 11, 3 are still owe me product. Those 3 are the Mongoose, the second Mongoose Journal of the Traveler's Aid Society Kickstarter, which is the first one I've got the stuff for. The second is the Call of Cthulhu classic stuff, which I should really be getting any time, might even be this week. The third is Planar Compass issue 3. Why the fuck I backed that, I have no idea. But it seemed like a good idea at the time, and I looked through the first couple, and they're sort of interesting. It's an OSR, D&D, DIY thing. I probably shouldn't have bothered. The thing with Kickstarter is you're really kind of backing the idea, right? It is treated... I'm going to sound like I'm criticizing Compass Games here, aren't I? And that's not my intention. Because the fact is that a lot of companies use Kickstarter as just a pre-order thing, right? In Compass's case, it's not even really it's a pre-order, but it's in the warehouse, right? It's not like you're not going to get it. There's no risk involved in backing a Compass Games Kickstarter. I was not in any of the really bad Kickstarter clusterfucks, actually. No, that's not true. I wasn't. There was one that I did back that was, that I don't want to mention, that never materialized, but I think to the extent that I backed it, I did get my one small digital reward. I didn't back it for like the whole kit and caboodle. But I was not in on the upfront thing. So, you are better off viewing just like if you go to the casino and you have $100 to spend at the casino, you're better off saying, I have $100 to have fun with at the casino, and not thinking, I have $100 to spend at the casino to make more money. Just like that, going into Kickstarter, you're better off saying, I want this product, these people, whatever it is, I want this to succeed. I'm going to give them some money. And if I get some stuff in a year, that's great. And if I don't, well, there's some risk associated with the enterprise. You got to understand that. Well, they're all still in progress. There's been a couple of Kickstarters that have been picked up by unrelated people who bailed them out. Troll Lord Games is in the process of bailing, I think, Ernie Gygax out. Don't quote me on any of that. Somebody bailed out James Maslowski on whatever his Mega Dungeon thing was. And James had like serious real world shit going down. So that's not a slur on him. That's just he needed somebody to come in and help him at the end. To make that happen. And a lot of times these projects suffer from, especially if it's just like one guy or one person, sometimes they can suffer from scope creep and end up being this giant project that never gets finished, aka the Total War problem. I prefer not to back established companies in Kickstarter because I think that was not the original intention of Kickstarter. The original intention was to back independent products that can't afford to finance their project. That was that's my idea, but, certainly lots of people just treat it the other way. The upfront Game Vault product is nicer than the original. I will. If you get the POD stuff, it is nicer than the original. Pretty sure the cards are. So if by compatible you mean rules wise, yes, they should be. If you mean can you just mix them together with the old cards, no, because they're like real cards. They're not those crappy old Avalon Hill cards. Oh, and I have complete faith in the three that I still have out. I'm really trying to be very selective about this stuff. I will continue to back whatever Mongoose wants to do, and probably other Traveler Kickstarters. I'm kicking myself. I had the Droin coins backed, and I backed out of it just because I didn't want to spend the money at the time, and I probably shouldn't have. They're starting to get delivered, and they're really nice. And there may or may not be any left over at the end of that. Jeff Beeler says, what is the best way to find interesting wargaming projects? What have been some of the outstanding wargame Kickstarters? Well, wargaming as a hobby is not very dependent on Kickstarter. There's a lot of good ideas in the wargaming space that are emerging independently of crowdfunding platforms. So, honestly, if you just look at the projects, these are all from established players in the hobby, right? From Flying Pig or One Small Step or Compass or whoever, right? They're the same people we're buying stuff from anyway. So I don't think you need to go to any particular links. I think you're better off, if you want to find interesting wargaming products, is maybe go look at smaller wargaming publishers. And I'm specifically thinking of Legion Wargames, Worthington to a lesser extent. They do some interesting things too. Damn it, who is Revolution Games, Colin Spiel, White Dog Games, check them out. Catastrophe Games is doing some interesting stuff. I think you're better off just looking at the publishers, because the Kickstarters that you see are going to be from the same publishers. We're a small enough hobby that you can launch these products. Now, there's also other things that are like the new Labatai games coming out from Marshall Enterprises by the end of the year. They have a pre-order thing up, but they're not doing it on Kickstarter. Why? Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Might be better off if they did it on Kickstarter. But it will, buyer beware, right? So, Reaper Bones Kickstarters, I mean, there's been a bunch of those, if you're into miniatures. I was very tempted to buy the new Twilight 2000 at the Warzone when I was up there. And I didn't, but I was tempted. I'm more tempted to buy an original Twilight 2000, to be honest about it. And I believe you can get a print-on-demand version through DriveThru RPG. So, New England Simulations does have the new version of Hell's Highway on the way. And that game's got a very strong reputation. I'm very curious to see what that looks like. And I'll mention, I don't, Brandt is pimping himself here, but he's right. They do a weekly roundup of new releases and new product announcements and stuff like that. So you can absolutely look at the Armchair Dragoon site and just pay attention to their feed and get a pretty good view of what's going on. There was that We Were Soldiers game, and somebody had that at Compass Expo too, and it's nice. It's a big tactical Vietnam game. And that was a Kickstarter. Matt Taylor says a lot of people left Kickstarter after they went blockchain. Well, I'm not really convinced that many people left Kickstarter for that reason. Are there some people? Sure. It's barring numbers to the contrary, which we don't have. It's my position that the number of people that left is probably a number small enough that Kickstarter doesn't really care. I'm not a big fan of blockchain or crypto or whatever. Boy, if you had a bunch of money in crypto, whew, you're probably super unhappy right now. I did drop about $75 on crypto at one point, and now it's worth about $20. So, but it wasn't a lot of money, right? And I was not under the impression that it was a lot of money. It was, I mean, I might as well have bought lottery tickets. That's the way I looked at it. There are other crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe and that kind of stuff too. So, Stigler's talking about Winter's Victory. That's the ILAO game coming from New England Simulations. It is very handsome. And I am very... This is another one that I'm probably not going to pre-order, and then I'm probably going to say when it comes out, boy, that's really nice, I better go buy it. Because that's a thing I do. That's what I did with Jaws of Victory. And it is... so, hey, maybe it'll recover. Who knows? Who knows? So, no sense dumping it now, right? So I have been GameFound. Boy, that is a platform I'm not at all familiar with. Brent, thanks for stopping by. Well, my nose is getting congested here. I've got this. I had to have the air. If there's a buzz that you can hear, it's the air conditioner in this. My sort of. This is really an attic, right? So we got to have the air conditioner on. Front Towards Enemy's got a good reputation. It's Joe Chacon game. It looks pretty good, but it's tactical Vietnam, and there's a lot of room for that space to grow. Let me put it that way. I should check out GameFound. Fire on the Mountain always makes me think of the Grateful Dead song Fire on the Mountain. So I've only, I think, done one Wargame Kickstarter. I think this is correct, and that was the new edition of War and Peace. All my other Kickstarter things have been RPG products. Not true. There was this was another statistic I found looking at the history. I have backed exactly one Kickstarter that didn't fund, that just didn't make its number, and that was the Pantheon Rise of the Fallen Kickstarter. That was another one of the here's a couple dollars for moral support thing, and they didn't make it. I think they later did another Kickstarter that did succeed, and they've done some outside crowdfunding, and that's still chugging along as far as I can tell. And I think this month we're supposed to get some new gameplay footage of it, so we'll see what that turns out into. But at this point, I'm not going to lose any sleep over Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, which is a really horrendous name. Rise of the Fallen. Seriously? Mongoose. Thank you, John Longshore. So Compass has been putting most, if not all, of their new releases up on Kickstarter for a very brief, 12-day period. 10, 12 days, something like so. It's a short Kickstarter just to get last-minute pre-orders. So it's in Compass's case, it really is a last-minute pre-order channel. Why you should order it through Kickstarter rather than going to Compass directly and getting it from them, I don't know. They're all printed by the time they hit Kickstarter. So, I managed to avoid the upfront thing, so which is good because I would have been interested in that. But as has been mentioned, if you don't know, this was mentioned up thread, but you can get basically all the stuff as print-on-demand stuff from Wargame Vault, and you'll end up with a much nicer quality game than you would have gotten if you run down the original Avalon Hill originals. The card quality's higher, everything's better quality. So does Compass cut off the pre-orders on the website before they launch the Kickstarter? Maybe, but I've never seen that. So maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. I would just go to Compass directly and pre-order it, but I'm relatively clued in on what Compass has in the pipeline, so I don't need to do that. They disable ordering on their website when the Kickstarter is active. Okay, I mean, like I said, it's a last-minute thing. I think that is where they are prepping it for shipping in the warehouse, and that's why it's a short Kickstarter too. Yeah, I mean, so what do they got up right now? Let's pull this up. So I think, is Enemy Action Kharkov still up? It has 1 day to go. So, pulling this up again. So here's their Kickstarter for Enemy Action Kharkov, which is the current one, right? And this was like an 10 or 11 or something like that days, and they've sold an extra 273 copies. Now, that's probably closing in on 10% of their print run right there in extra copies that they're selling through Kickstarter. And if you haven't seen the inside of this, Mo's got a video and I've got an inferior video, so you can check my video out if you want. And there's a link to the Kickstarter. I'll put this link in the chat as well if anybody wants to go back it in the next 42 hours. It's a very nice looking game, and I expect good things from it. Let me put it that way. I'm trying to track down what we're talking about. War for America? Andrew says it's unplayable out of the box. Well, we're gonna find out locally here at some point. I have not looked at GameFound at all, so I can't really even comment on that. So, all right, let us move in a trajectory towards wrapping it up here. So, coming up tomorrow, Traveler Tuesday video, 10 a.m. 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We have the live stream with Dan at No Enemies Here. I don't know what our topic's going to be. We're batting topics around, and then I'm telling Dan he's got to get guests if we have certain topics. So, Wednesday. No, not Wednesday. That's Tuesday. Wednesday, the video from the live stream of Six Ages goes up on the digital channel. There's a link to the digital channel in the video description, in this video description, and there's a link to the Twitch channel if you want to follow me there. You can't say subscribe. Subscribe is something special with Twitch. But if you want to follow me there, by all means, go ahead. And I may do more Twitch streaming. I don't know. I might not. Who knows? There is a Thursday feature unboxing, which is Almoravid, new from Velco and GMT. Looks really good. And Friday, there is a bonus unboxing of Compass's Russian campaign from John Edwards and Compass, and it looks really good, too. I'm like, it wasn't like I didn't want to like this, man. It looked good. So check that out. It's a very simple game. And then we have the new live stream, the new bi-weekly live stream on Sunday the 22nd at 7:30 Eastern, and it's going to run an hour and a half. Now, I reserve the right to make schedule adjustments to that. So, and we might. And I expect to, right? I kind of want to get it started and see where it goes and see what the audience, wants to talk about and all that stuff. I would like for it to be different from this, which is mostly me talking. So I'd like to have more extra people. And then, like the videos, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Looks like we topped out about 134, which has been pretty, standard lately. Now that we've, the weather's getting nicer and people are going out again, that's still a really great number. So we've got another 2 minutes if anybody has any final questions. Joe Okabayashi, welcome back. I saw your name in there and I meant to say hello and I missed it. John Clark, you as well. And Chris K, welcome back to the stream. Now, the only place, if I do a Twitch stream, it's because I decided, at that time, that I have time to be on for an hour, right? So there's never an advance announcement or anything like that. Instead, there'll just be like a thing that goes to Twitter that says, "Hey, Ardwulf is live." So Follow me on social media. I am by far most active on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, because, oh, for fuck's sake. That was my phone thinking it needed to answer that question. So, all right. So, great. Oh, yeah, Javel Krieg. Fabulous. Have fun with that. It's great. It's a really good game. Really good game system. So don't forget to thumbs up the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to, become a patron if you can. I appreciate it. We got a big move coming. I don't know what the big move's going to be, but I have like 4 things that I'm like going through. Do I get that, or do I get that, or do I get that, or do I get that? One of which will get invested in the next couple of weeks. So I would like to thank everybody for stopping by tonight, everybody for questions, everybody for contributions. Andrew is a new patron, so thank you, Andrew. And I got another new patron too, whose name I did not put in the notes. So and don't buy Twitter stock. Actually, don't buy Tesla stock. Well, actually, right now might be a good time to buy Tesla stock. They're both down, so yeah, thumbs up the video or thumbs down. I don't care. It's the same. It's for algorithmic purposes. It's exactly the same. It is so preview of not tomorrow's, but next week's Traveler Tuesday. It's not a flip through. Poop. Almoravid. It's nice. You should get it. I just messed all that up because it wasn't stacked properly. Carl from the Wargame Bootcamp. Thank you so much, Carl. I appreciate it very much. I think YouTube has adjusted the monetization algorithm again, and because they cut my incoming money by about 40%. So, very irritating. So, at any rate, thanks, everybody. I appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with me tonight. We will be there at Dan's place tomorrow, and don't forget to tune in next Sunday for the RPG stream if you are into that.